Hey there guys, just casting a tile mold today. Thought you might like to see how I did that. So first I'll show you this here. See, I have the tile master all set down in the cottle boards, tightly clamped. I've soaked the mold in the master in the cottle boards there, keep the plaster from sticking, and then put a nice coil of scrap clay around to keep the plaster from leaking out. So that's a good start. So from there, I'm first going to start by weighing out my water. Now I've calculated the water I need to about 6 pounds as per the volume of my cottle here. This is water that I put out on the porch in a jug last night. It's winter here, so it's cold, and in the summer I'll just put that in the freezer for a few hours, get it nice and cold. That just slows down our reaction a little bit. Gives us some time to slake and to work and to mix. And I've zeroed out my scale to account for the weight of the bowl, so I get a nice accurate mix here. Maybe I'll just go slightly over. I think that ought to do it. So now that I have my water all weighed out, I just start adding the plaster. Now you can weigh it out, but I prefer just to sift it in. We do what's called the island method. Pretty old, tried and true. And I just slowly go ahead and just keep shaking some dry plaster into the water until we get nice formation of some little floating islands that stay up. And I'll show you what that looks like as soon as I get to that point. Now normally it would be a good idea, and generally I do, wear a respirator. You don't want to be breathing the plaster dust, and generally I don't do this in the shop, but it's awful cold out there today. And I figured I'd just forgo the mask today so I could talk to you. Don't need to have a mold making video done by Darth Vader over here. So we just keep sifting, and I'm going to keep at that, and I'll come back in a second and show you what those floating islands look like. So you see there, I have a nice floating island about half the surface area of the plaster, and I just, keep sprinkling. So I'm going to let that slake for 3 or 4 minutes here. I'll get my timer on, and that's just to make sure we have good hydration. And I'll come back and mix in a couple minutes. Alright, you see we've given it a few minutes to soak there, and it's absorbed some water. And that just makes sure you don't have any dry clumps in there. So now we can get to mixing. So the big thing when mixing plaster, now this is cold, so I'm not looking forward, but just get in there, just get right in there with your hands, and just try not to introduce any air. I like to kind of vibrate it just slightly. Get in there, try to break up any lumps very carefully. Ooh. We mix this cold mush for a few minutes, make sure to get all the lumps out. We just want a nice consistent, but I don't want to get in there and beat it up hard, because you really don't want those air bubbles, and I'll show you what we do to try to eliminate air bubbles further as we go through. But really you just want to mix for 3 or 4 minutes, or as long as you can stand the cold. So I pull my hand out every now and again just to, but we want to get it nicely incorporated. Make sure all our water's worked in, make sure all the plaster's nice and evenly mixed. So you see here just how I just kind of jiggle it and move it throughout, and you'll feel it start to thicken up, get a nice creamy texture. So now I'm quite happy with how it's incorporated, and I pull out my secret weapon. It's just one of these massage guns. And I crank that right on up. And that just helps me just vibrate the table, vibrate the bowl. And doing that real quick just helps me rise the bubbles to the top. I take some cheap whiskey, or you can use rubbing alcohol or denatured, and just spritz that over the top, and the bubbles go away like magic. So from here, we'll go back to the coddle box here, and we just want to very carefully and steadily pour. Now you don't want to pour onto the master, or whatever you're trying to cast. You want to pour into a corner and just let the plaster rise over. Now, I cast a bit just until it covers the piece, and then I go back in with my vibrating tool here, and I just vibrate the table. That helps me rise any bubbles out off of the surface of the tile master. Now when I'm happy with that, we just don't want any bubble defects in our texture there. I'll give another quick spritz with alcohol there. And then I just continue pouring. Now you have to work somewhat quickly because this plaster is trying to set up the whole time. And I still don't want to pour over the piece. If there's any defects, I'd rather they not be anywhere near the surface. That allows me to keep very high detail. You notice we're thickening up here. Just going to bang it slightly there, get it to even out. Put a little bit more in. And it's alright if it doesn't look too pretty on top right away, because I'm going to vibrate it, shake it all down into place, and then I'll do the bubble, spray the top again with the alcohol. So you can see I've cast it there. I have a little texture in the top. Usually I vibrate it a bit more to flatten that out, but I had a little blowout at the bottom seam there. I don't usually cast on this table. So right away, get some water in your bowl and get to cleaning that out. I'll go dump that outside. You never want to put it down a drain. So I'll just wash that right out. I'll set the timer for about 55 minutes or so, and I'll come right on back, check on that. That reaction will start to heat up. Even though that water is cold, it's going to heat, and once it heats and starts to stiffen, we'll pull the coddle boards and start releasing things. Alright, so I'll see you in almost an hour. Alright, so this is heating up very nicely, getting quite warm. So I've started taking the clamps off. I'll get the rest of those off here. You see the coddle boards come right away. Usually before I unmold, I really like to get those coddle boards just wiped. Just get them nice and clean right now, and they'll be clean next time I need them. So let me do that. I'll come back and show you the rest. Okay, so I have the mold still heating up here. You see where I had my little blowout there. That's no big deal. We just get under there with a scraper and try to break some of that away, but I can do that in a bit. But I like to just take a metal rib, regular metal rib, and just get my corners struck down there. I just find it easier to do this now. And it's no big deal because this clay ceiling here, I'm just going to be tossing that outside. I don't want any contamination in my clay body, which is why I don't usually do this in the shop at all. But I just like to strike those corners. It makes the mold a lot less fragile, a lot harder to chip, because you don't need a mold chipping on you. So I'll just get to that and round some things up, and then we'll come back and open her in a few minutes. So you can see I've got all my corners nicely rounded there. Now if you can do a rough job on it and come back in after the mold's completely dry with a rasp or a piece of sandpaper or whatever, and that's probably not a bad idea. But I just like to get it a little clean for now. See, I'll just get her flipped over. They're flipped over there. Yeah, you can see where I had a little plaster blowout, so I'll have to come around the underside of the master there, so I'll have to clean that up. I just continue pulling that clay gasket out of there a little bit. Just makes it easier to break the suction. Now I like to get these released while the mold is still warm, because when it cools completely it contracts a little bit, and that can make it harder to wiggle that out. So we just do it now. So I just get it at the corners and slightly carefully lift and slightly carefully wiggle. We're just trying to break that suction without causing any issue. There we go, it's released. We'll make sure to get it released at all points, and then just carefully wiggle it out. And there's our master again. Set that aside. And a brand new, fairly clean mold. So you'll see there, I'll do the same with the scraping. I'll clean that all up, and then I put it up in a warm, dry place to cure and dry until it's completely ready. You really want it nice and dry before you try to use it, but it's worth being patient. Well, I hope y'all have appreciated this or found it entertaining or useful at all, and keep an eye out. We'll have more in the future, and I'm sure I'll show you in the future making some tiles out of this. Y'all take care of yourself, take care of each other, love each other, be good. Take care. Bye.